room. This is the play that just occurred.
As he tries to slide over right there, and Hartley just falls and makes collision with that lower leg. You see her immediately grab it, and she went down hard and was clearly in a lot of pain.
It started with a collision that stopped the arena cold. Sophie Cunningham, the Fever's heartbeat of toughness and spacing, crumpled to the floor screaming after Bria Hartley fell straight into her right knee. For a moment, basketball didn't matter. Every fan in the building felt the fear ripple through their chest, and when the refs swallowed their whistles, the outrage boiled over instantly. This wasn't just one injury in one game. For Fever fans, it was deja vu. Caitlin Clark sidelined by a groin hit, the infamous poke to the eye, the reckless foul by Marina Mabry that flattened her. Every matchup with the Suns seemed to end with Indiana's stars in pain, and Cunningham's collapse felt like another grim entry in a disturbing pattern. But here's the thing, Indiana didn't fold. They didn't sulk. They didn't pack it in. They fought back. And behind Kelsey Mitchell's career night, Odyssey Sims' unlikely heroic, and a dagger from Lexie Hull, the Fever pulled off the largest comeback in franchise history, an overtime win nobody thought possible. So how did they go from heartbreak to history? Let's break it down. Midway through the second quarter, Sophie Cunningham fought for position under the rim like she always does. Scrappy, fearless, relentless. That's when Bria Hartley lost her balance and toppled straight into Sophie's leg. The impact was brutal. Cunningham immediately clutched her knee, screaming as she crumpled to the hardwood. Trainers rushed over, teammates looked on in disbelief, and the officials? Nothing. No whistle, no foul. Play continued as if one of Indiana's toughest players wasn't writhing in agony right beneath the basket.
Shot clock down to 6 for the Fever. Turner, up fade. Turner kicks it. Hull three-pointer. Bottom!
Indiana,
7 on the shot clock, 25 seconds in regulation.
they gotta get to the rim.
Charles has to hoist and connects. Wow. The Indiana Fever prove their resiliency.
That decision lit a fuse. Fans erupted, waving at referees and demanding a stoppage. On social media, anger spread instantly. How many times, they asked, does this team have to take hits without protection? This wasn't paranoia, it was a pattern. J.C. Sheldon's poke to Caitlin Clark's eye back in June. Mabry's hard foul that flattened her, Sheldon's knee to Clark's groin in July, the injury that's kept her sidelined for over a month. Every time Indiana played the Sun, it seemed like someone left broken. Cunningham's family weighed in and their frustration was unfiltered. Her sister Lindsay blasted the league directly. To NBA, maybe you should focus less on fining players for commenting on poor officiating and more on hiring refs who can actually protect athletes. Pathetic. Her mother Paula went even further, accusing Hartley of playing out of control and calling the sequence plain. These weren't just emotional outbursts. Yeah, they were echoes of what fans had already been shouting, that the Fever were being forced to survive in a league unwilling to protect its stars. Even coach Stephanie White admitted the sight was gut-wrenching. She rushed over and, by her own words, thought, holy shit, that's not the polished coach speak you hear in pressers, like that was raw fear. The MRI was scheduled for the following day, but everyone in the building already knew the impact went beyond one player, because Sophie Cunningham wasn't just another piece in the rotation. She was spacing. She was toughness. She was the glue holding together a roster already duct-taped by injuries. Losing her in the middle of a game where the Fever had no true point guard on the floor felt like the final straw. On paper, this game should have been over right there. Indiana looked undermanned, out of rhythm, and rattled. By halftime, rotations were a mess, roles were stretched thin, and the scoreboard tilted heavily in Connecticut's favor. Everything pointed toward another painful loss, but instead of collapsing, the Fever did what they've quietly been doing all year. They dug in. Cunningham's collapse didn't just sap their energy, it lit a fire. Every player on the floor, from veterans to hardship signees, understood that nobody was coming to save them, and if the officials weren't going to protect them, they'd have to protect each other. That's when the fight back began. Even before Sophie Cunningham hit the deck, the Fever walked into this matchup staring at an impossible math problem. How do you win a WNBA game with 0 true point guards available? Caitlin Clark was still sidelined with that groin injury from mid-July. Sydney Colson, torn ACL, out for the season. Ari McDonald, nursing a broken foot. That meant Stephanie White didn't have a single floor general to run her offense. Think about that. Most teams this deep into the season are polishing their sets, fine-tuning for the postseason. Indiana, they had to rip their playbook in half and simplify everything just so players could survive handling the ball outside their natural positions. It was triage basketball. White admitted as much. Rotations had to be reimagined, substitution patterns improvised, roles expanded for players who weren't ready for heavy minutes. It wasn't about building a system. It was about plugging holes and hoping the dam didn't burst. And when Cunningham went down, the cracks turned into canyons. By halftime, Indiana looked exhausted, disorganized, and dangerously close to getting blown out. Their star defender was in the locker room, their offensive spacing evaporated, and their backcourt was still a patchwork of players just trying not to drown. Everything about this setup screamed disaster, but sometimes desperation is the only thing that forces a team to find its true identity. The Fever could have unraveled. They could have shrugged and said, "Not tonight." Not with this many injuries, not after losing Sophie. But that's not who this group is. Inside the locker room, a different mindset took hold. Chip away became the rallying cry.
After Phoenix, it was a quick turnaround to figure out how we're going to play without Harry and Sid. And now we got to figure out how we're going to play without Soph. We've got to figure out who can play in certain roles. What are our substitution patterns going to be? What kind of wrinkles can we throw out there? It doesn't get easier. And I think we come back and have Minnesota twice, right? So it's really good mentally, physically, and emotionally for us. And then it gives us practice time, which we're going to need.
They weren't going to erase a 21-point hole in one possession. They weren't going to out-pretty Connecticut, but they could outlast them. They could outfight them. And for a team that had been defined all year by injuries, foul trouble, and controversy, resilience wasn't just a talking point. It was a survival strategy. When the Fever say "next woman up," it isn't a cliche. It's reality. This season has demanded it. When Clark went down, others stepped in. When Colson's knee buckled, the rotation shifted again. When Ari couldn't lace them up, yet another adjustment. And now, with Sophie gone, there was no choice but to dig deeper. Coach White hammered it home. Spread apart, and the season goes down quicker than anything else. Stay connected, and they had a chance. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't polished, but if they could lean on togetherness, the cracks might hold just long enough to give them a shot. Possession slowed down. Coming out of halftime, that mindset started to show. Effort plays, diving for loose balls, fighting for second chances, disrupting passing lanes, kept Indiana within shouting distance. It didn't look like a comeback yet, but it looked like a team refusing to roll over. And then, one player decided she wasn't leaving Connecticut without rewriting the script. Kelsey Mitchell had just 4 points at halftime. That's it, 4. She looked quiet, tentative, maybe even fatigued from shouldering too much responsibility all season. But as the third quarter unfolded, something shifted. Mitchell started demanding the ball. Every possession, she attacked. Pull-up jumpers, step-back threes, drives into traffic, trips to the line. Suddenly, she wasn't just keeping Indiana alive. She was dragging them back into the game, one dagger at a time. And the efficiency was absurd. This wasn't reckless gunning. This was surgical execution.
Sophie Cunningham, writhing around in pain, definitely hurt, and Sophie's one tough cookie. If Sophie's kicking and screaming like this, no Will Farrell, she's in pain. We even have Connecticut Sun players, look at that, Connecticut Sun players coming up to her as the Fever starts making their way down.
By night's end, Mitchell finished 11 of 22 from the field, 5 of 8 from deep, and 11 out of 12 from the line. She dished 6 assists too, making sure the offense didn't collapse into pure isolation. Each shot felt heavier than the last. Down 21 earlier, Indiana had no margin for error. One wasted trip could have buried them, but Mitchell didn't waste. She hit back-to-back threes to erase deficits. She nailed step-backs in the fourth that silenced the home crowd, and she calmly knocked down free throws in overtime with the kind of poise that only comes from knowing the game belongs to you. By the end of regulation, it was obvious. This wasn't going to be remembered as the night Sophie went down. It was going to be remembered as the night Kelsey Mitchell put the Fever on her back and said, "Not today." And she was just getting started. By the time the dust settled, Kelsey Mitchell had unleashed one of the greatest scoring performances in Fever history. 38 points, 34 of them after halftime, 10 in overtime alone. Every single one carved straight into Connecticut's chest. She wasn't just hot, she was untouchable. And the numbers back it up. She tied her career high, posted the single highest scoring game in the WNBA this season, and most importantly, passed franchise legend Tamika Catchings for the most 30-point games in Fever history with 11. That's not just a milestone, that's a coronation. Mitchell wasn't just keeping Indiana afloat while Clark was out. She was reminding the league that she's been doing this for years, nearly 20 points per game on the season. Top 5 in the league in scoring. And now, with Clark sidelined and Cunningham out, Mitchell proved she's not just a placeholder star. She's a centerpiece. Even Caitlin Clark herself chimed in on social media with 2 simple words: P. Kells. Sometimes it takes a night like this to make people finally notice what's been right in front of them. Coach Stephanie White admitted after the game she was speechless.
Every day in our huddle, that's what we say together. And it's just more than words for us. I think when we see things happening, there's no other way. If you spread apart, the season goes down quicker than anything else. And you talk about with the injuries, people are probably expecting us to just fold, just like you said. And that's not us. We come in the locker room and we're motivated. We continue to be motivated every single time we step on that floor. At halftime, we're motivated, chip away, and that's our mindset. And just continue to uplift people. You know, one person goes down, down. We say it all the time, the next woman stands up. And that's really just been our motto and been what we've had to do a lot this season. And that's what we're just going to continue to do.
She put us on her back, White said, after a big play. From the sideline, it was obvious. Even Connecticut's defenders, glued to her every move, couldn't stop the rhythm she was locked into. By overtime, there was no doubt whose game it was. This wasn't Connecticut losing. This was Kelsey Mitchell taking it. But as dazzling as Mitchell was, comebacks this big never belong to just one player. Behind every historic takeover are the grinders, the glue players, the ones who fill the cracks so the star can shine. Odyssey Sims deserves her flowers. Signed on a hardship contract just to give Indiana a warm body in the rotation, Sims played like she'd been a cornerstone all year. 19 points, 7 assists, breaking the Suns' full-court pressure, navigating traps, and feeding Mitchell in rhythm. Without her steady hands, the Fever don't even get close. Aliyah Boston was her usual force of nature. 14 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Her 15th double-double of the season, breaking the Fever's single-season record. Boston's value went beyond the stat sheet. She absorbed double teams, created second chances, and anchored Indiana's defense when everything else threatened to fall apart. Natasha Howard brought the muscle.
Connecticut's on training staff.
18 points, 9 rebounds, and the kind of bruising interior presence that kept Connecticut from bullying Indiana into submission. Every basket she scored in the paint felt like a counterpunch. Brianna Turner's impact was quieter, but no less essential. Her defense in the second half shifted the game's balance, switching across multiple positions, forcing extra passes, disrupting rhythm. It doesn't show up in headlines, but it shows up in the box score plus-minus. White singled her out afterward for being the consummate pro who does whatever is asked. And then there was Lexie Hull, 8 points total, but with 44 seconds left in overtime, Indiana clinging to a fragile lead, Hull slid into the corner, caught a kick out, and buried the 3 that slammed the door on Connecticut. One shot, one moment, one dagger that turned resilience into history. That's the kind of play fans never forget. When the final buzzer sounded, the scoreboard read 99-93. The Fever had stormed back from down 21 to complete the largest comeback in franchise history. And they did it on the road against one of the league's toughest teams with no true point guard, no Caitlin Clark, and no Sophie Cunningham. That's more than just a win. That's an identity statement. This team doesn't fold. They don't quit. They don't accept excuses, they fight, and they're still fighting for the playoffs, moving to 19-16 on the year and keeping themselves firmly in the chase. Coach White summed it up simply: we will never be counted out. The takeaway is bigger than one game. It's about what Indiana is becoming. A team that, even shorthanded, refuses to be dismissed. A team built on grit, resiliency, and togetherness. And a team that now knows they have more than one star who can carry them into the future. For fans, this night will always carry 2 emotions: heartbreak for Sophie Cunningham and awe at Kelsey Mitchell's eruption. If you support Sophie, drop a prayer for her in the comments. If you ride with the Fever, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter in this wild season. Because if this game proved anything, it's that Indiana Fever basketball is never over until it's over.